How's it going, guys? This is Al. I'm going over some early season fantasy football draft strategies. We're going to break down what I want to do from early position or late position. If you draw 1, 2, or 3 in your draft, if you draw 9, 10, 11, or 12 in your draft, which one do I prefer? It seems like an easy answer. Usually it is. I've got a counter for you if you're running your friends and family leagues and you do a snake draft format and not an auction. Auction is always better. But if you run a snake draft, I'm going to give you an idea of something that they use in some of these national high-stakes leagues that they've used in the past. I believe that they still do to kind of counteract the top-heavy nature of a football draft. I'm going to go over some paths that you can take early in the draft, mid-round picks that I like, and late-round picks, rounds 12 and later. Guys that I think are a little bit undervalued right now that might not be by the time we get into preseason games and everything else, so you can take advantage if you are drafting early. So I'm going to put the chat in subs-only mode, because all of my football streams and NBA streams are always locked down to subs only. So if you want to take part in the chat, if you want to jump into the Discord, you have got to subscribe to the channel. Easiest way to do it is with Twitch Prime. So look at some ADPs real quick. Let's go over here to the board. Early round is pretty straightforward. You're going to get a lot of running backs coming off the board early. Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson. Even with Le'Veon Bell's threat to sit out the season, he ain't sitting out half the season. That's not going to happen. Ezekiel Elliott, you're going to see some Antonio Brown in there. He slid to me in the SFB 8 all the way down to 9 because of the scoring in that league is heavily skewed towards running backs. It's only half PPR. He fell to me. I was happy taking him. Then I adjusted my draft from there on. Alvin Kamara going 6th, then Saquon Barkley. Where do you stand on the Giants rookie? Something that you're going to have to consider. If you want to go get him, you have to draft him early. And this reminds me of Ezekiel Elliott, his rookie year. Everybody said, I don't know if I'm going to take Ezekiel Elliott because he's going in the first round of drafts. I don't want to pay first round price for a rookie running back who's never played a snap in the NFL. If you are the type of person who says he has never played a snap in the NFL, stop saying that. Talent is talent. Okay? And just because somebody hasn't played yet doesn't mean that we can't ascertain that their talent level and volume possibility is greater than somebody else who isn't. So, you know, Mike Clay said it best the other day, just because Saquon Barkley hasn't played a snap in the NFL doesn't mean that he's not better than a bunch of backups that have played for 5 or 10 years in the NFL. We know kind of where Saquon Barkley stands based on comps, and we know how much volume he's going to get in that offense, so that's where you're going. In a 14-team PPR redraft snake, drafting from the 8, would I take Barkley or Kamara there, or go for the 1 or 2 wide receiver? If Kamara's available, I want Kamara. He's the best of the group there. Drafting later in the round, obviously, if you can get somebody like at the 8 spot, if you look at just the standard PPR or standard ADPs, you're going to get somebody like DeAndre Hopkins, which would be a great take, 100 receptions possible. Or you could get somebody like Kareem Hunt or Melvin Gordon. I'm probably not going to take Leonard Fournette in full PPR. Now, drafting at the top this year, and most years in NFL, drafting at the top gives you a distinct advantage because you're going to get these running backs right here. Todd Gurley, Lev Bell, David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott, who are just kind of heads and shoulders. Tier 1 is the top 3, and Ezekiel Elliott leads off on Tier 2 of running backs. I believe he's a tier below those top 3. But in order to counteract that, some leagues have gone to a modified snake. Instead of going 1 through 12, then 12 through 1, and 1 through 12, and 12 through 1, they flip round 3, and the rest of the draft just goes along its way. So round 1 would be pick 1 through pick 12. Round 2 would be pick 12 through pick 1, and round 3 would also be pick 12 through pick 1, and then 1, 12, 12, 1, 1, 12, 12, 1, moving forward from there to try and even things out. Because if you're picking first, second, or third, and S. Boynton 10, thank you very much for the new sub. Zoo York 33, thank you very much with the tier 1 sub. Appreciate you joining the family. You have a distinct advantage this year because of a couple of reasons. One, I think it's very important this year, more than in past years, to have one of the premium tight ends. That means Rob Gronkowski, Travis Kelce, and Zach Ertz are so head and shoulders above the rest of the tight ends in this year's group right now. And I'll explain something as we get to the middle rounds as well, that I want to have as much exposure to those 3 guys in my catalog of drafts as I can possibly have. So in order to get them, you have to pay up. Now, if you're picking 12, you know, look where Gronk's ADP is. It's down at 21. If you skip on Gronk here, you're not getting him at your next picks, right? Because it goes 1 through 12. then 12 through 1, and then 1 through 12. You're not getting these cats. It just ain't happening, right? So at 24, then here and then there, you're just not getting these dudes at all. You may luck box yourself into Ertz, but based on what I've seen, you're not getting him, right? Like, he's down here at overall 35, but he's going somewhere in the middle of the third round, usually 2 or 3 picks after Travis Kelce. So if you're picking late, you have to adjust your draft strategy to either reach for one of them, and it's probably going to be Gronk if you're going to reach for one. Pray that one falls to you at the turn at, what is it, at 3-4, right? Or go with a lower, go with somebody like Olsen, or take 2 of the mid-round guys, right? The rookies, or Kittle, or Njoku going into his second year, or Trey Burton on the Bears. So you have to kind of adjust that strategy if you're picking late. If you're picking early, you're probably not going with a, with a 0 RB approach. You don't need to, right? So if you're picking early, you're going to get one of these guys. If you're picking 1, 2, 3, you're getting one of these dudes. And then at the turn, you might get Jerick McKinnon, though he usually is not there at the turn. He's usually going here in the middle of the round. You can take other running backs that are in that range. There's plenty of guys available for you here. You can go wide receiver. I usually go with a hyper-fragile sort of approach. Beerswater wrote a great article about it a few years ago. I'm trying to end drafts with about 5 running backs. I'm loading up at wide receiver, two quarterbacks. Well, let's say 2.5 quarterbacks and 2.5 tight ends, right? I want 5 of those two positions combined, and as usual, I pay down for quarterback. I'm not going to have any shares of Aaron Rodgers. Probably not going to have very much Tom Brady outside of SFB 8. Probably not going to have Deshaun Watson for multiple reasons, regression being one of them, and the fact that you just have to pay up so much to get him. It's very, very tough for somebody like me who drafts like me to end up with shares of him because there's just so much value that you're passing up on. I draft quarterbacks typically somewhere between the 8th and the 11th round. I get 2 quarterbacks in those 3-4 rounds, 8 through 12, whatever. That's where I'm drafting quarterbacks. So let's take a look at some more ADP stuff. Like I said, Kenyon Drake sitting in here. If you think right now he's the lead back in Miami, if you think he's going to keep the job, great. If you don't, draft the rookie way later. Jay Ajayi, I think that he's going to see increased volume this year, probably 20 touches a game. You can see, I forget who did the tweet yesterday, or somebody tweeted out yesterday showing that the longer he was on the team going through the end of the season and into the playoffs, I would love to give credit, but I forget who tweeted out. I don't know if it was TJ or Amiksta. I don't remember who it is. So apologies for not remembering who tweeted that out about Jay Ajayi, but do a Twitter search for like Jay Ajayi and you'll probably find it, showing his volume in those games. And later in the season, for sure, he was getting 20 touches a game. Now he's got a full offseason with the playbook, OTAs, minicamp, preseason, everything else. I expect 20 carries out of him. I expect it to be a running back by committee approach, which means he's never going to see 30 touches or 30 carries and 5 targets. He's not going to get Melvin Gordon sort of volume, but he should get good enough volume for what you're paying for here. And this is the range where I like to usually go for the rookies, right? Guys like Darius Geis, guys like Rashad Penny, maybe even a Sony Michel. You're not going to get 250 touches out of Sony Michel, or you don't expect to get that. But there's a lot of rookies that have a path to 200 or 250 plus touches on this season. And they're priced as like the RB20s, the RB25s. You're not getting anybody else that can get that. And people are fading them because of the fact that they haven't played a snap yet in the NFL. So I don't know if I can trust these guys. I'm going with them, and I'm getting them at a price that's like my RB3, my RB4. So because I'm going with that hyper fragile approach, I'm trying to draft in my first 5 rounds. I'm trying to come out with 4 running backs and 1 tight end, especially if drafting from early position in drafts. If I draft from later position in drafts, that kind of changes my philosophy. I go more with a wide receiver approach, maybe 1 running back, maybe take 2 of these mid-round guys, an Ajayi and a rookie, then go with some later round running backs to fill in, really beef up my wide receivers, go with 2 mid-round tight ends between rounds 6 and 11, make sure I get 2 good tight ends as opposed to 1 premium and 1 okay, things like that. How do I figure out how much volume a player will get and will get increase in workload? Same as DFS. Look at the roster. Look at the tendencies. Check out the offensive coordinator's tendencies and players that he's coached and offenses he's coached before. There are plenty of people that have done a lot of work on this. most of the sites, if you subscribe to any fantasy football site, there is probably an article on offensive coordinator or head coach related volume to positions. We know which head coaches and offensive coordinators feed the ball more to tight ends. And if you see that there is a pass catching tight end that this OC has just taken over an offense for, take a look at it. If a guy favors a wide receiver 2, that, you know, wide receiver 2s have more wide receiver 2 seasons. Wide receiver 2 on their team in real life football ends up having a X amount, or 80% of the time they end up having a wide receiver 2 offensive season in terms of fantasy football. You're probably going to want to invest in that team's wide receiver 2 for your fantasy team, because you're probably going to pay a fantasy football wide receiver 4 price for those guys. The Giants have said they're going to pound the ball. They don't have a really good offensive line, but they have to do something to take the pressure off of Eli. They do get Odell Beckham back, so we can project that somebody like Saquon Barkley is going to get a ton of volume. Rashad Penny, they spent massive draft capital on this kid. They have really nobody else that has done anything great at the NFL level to expect them to be the bell cow back, or to get a ton of usage, or to be the guy. So here's this kid that's going to come in and can actually run the football, and the offensive coordinator said, I want to run the hell out of the ball, so therefore I'm going to project that he is going to get a good amount of touches on a per game basis and extrapolate that out over 16 games. So that's the simplest way to do it. And there's variance. Sometimes you're going to be right, and sometimes you're going to be wrong. But a lot like Jim Rome says, I don't really listen to Jim Rome all that much, but he does have that one line that I really like. Have a take and don't suck, right? That's all there is to it. Figure out the guys that you like, the guys that you're comfortable with, go after them and get them, and if it works out, you win a whole lot of leagues. And don't be afraid to skew yourself from the path, right? You don't have to do what everybody says. If you have a strong take on a player or a system or a situation, go get it. I'm definitely doing it. You should be too. Zoo York, thank you for the 50-bit donation. Appreciate you, brother. So moving on to the middle rounds, right? So let's talk about like rounds 6+. So we talked about getting a tight end early, talked about going running back early unless you're from late position, or a lot of running backs early unless you're from late position. Then you're going to want to maybe have to look for running backs in here. Mark Ingram, maybe a little bit too cheap. You're probably not going to get very much usage out of him until week 6. A lot of people don't like that, but you're getting him at a massive value. He's going as the RB23 right now. And especially in best ball formats, you don't have to pick which weeks he's going to be the guy. So, you know, even better in best ball for me there. Middle round is where I'm going after a lot of wide receivers. I'm trying to fill out my second tight end in this range if I can. Looks good, tight end. Come on. Come on. There you go. So, like, and what just happened there? Why did it put running backs there? Okay. Trey Burton going as the number 9 tight end. Now, here's what I was talking about. If you're looking at the tight ends, right? Rob Gronkowski, Kelsey, Ertz, they're going super high. Then Jimmy Graham. I have issues with Jimmy Graham as a tight end. I know that there's some other sharp players that don't have an issue with Jimmy Graham. Typically, what people see is Jimmy Graham is on Green Bay, and therefore Aaron Rodgers is going to be throwing him the ball, and therefore he's going to have a ridiculous amount of usage and a ridiculous amount of touchdowns and so many yards and so many catches. Not so fast, okay? Take a look, and I will tweet this out. I've done it before. I'll tweet it out again. Aaron Rodgers, over the past few years, since like Jermichael Finley, has not really thrown the ball to tight ends, especially not inside the red zone. Richard Rodgers had one pretty good year, but it was all touchdown related. And if you look at Jimmy Graham, he had an astronomical red zone market share of targets for Seattle last year, which resulted in most of his value being tied up in touchdowns. Didn't have very many catches, didn't have a whole lot of yards. He just, anytime they got in the red zone, they target him like 35% of the time. So I'm not paying for that. I'm also not paying for Evan Ingram, right? Somebody who benefited from everybody else being gone from that offense. They had no running back. Odell Beckham was gone. They now have a high volume running back, and Odell Beckham is back. So his volume is going to decrease. So everybody that was banking on, well, you know, and we were doing it in daily fantasy all the time last year. Look at the volume he's getting, a 10+ target guy. I'm not in. You know, I'm just not in right now on Evan Ingram, especially not for the price he's going for. I feel much better about grabbing Greg Olsen a couple of picks later. Yes, he's coming off of an injury. Yes, he's not young, but he's got a very good quarterback that relies on him. He gets activated between the 20s. He gets activated inside the red zone. I'm much happier going with Greg Olsen there. Kyle Rudolph, basically an end zone threat. Delaney Walker always hurt, but always plays, so I don't care about that. Really like Trey Burton. Jordan Reed going around the 9th and 10th rounds in drafts. I think that's a good value if he's your tight end 2, and realize that you're going to have to draft 3 tight ends if you pick him as your tight end 2. So be prepared to pick somebody late if you do that. And then coming down here, George Kittle, whole lot of buzz on him. His ADP is definitely climbing. I've seen him go as early as the 8th round in drafts. So if you want Kittle, don't think you can wait around to like the 11th round anymore. That's just not realistic. He is rising fast. Helium watch on him for sure. So some middle round guys. I like to focus on wide receivers in this range. I get my running backs early. I've got a bunch of guys that get 200 to 250 plus touches. So I'm focusing on wide receiver in this range. This is also where I'm picking my quarterbacks. Love the Kansas City offense. Chris Hogan should be a very good play this year as well. He's been my guy for the last couple years. Corey Davis might take a leap. Ryan Clark said something at the Fantasy Football Summit that made a lot of sense. Guys take a leap in their second year for good reason. They come out of college, they play their college football season, they go immediately to combine prep. After combine prep, they're doing a whole bunch of pro days. Then they do the draft, they do the whole media circuit, they got OTAs, they got mini camp, they got everything else. They never get a chance to rest and recover. They have to learn the entire playbook. Second year, they get time off after the season. They can rest and recover. They can then do their off-season workouts by themselves. They've had a year in the league. They know what to expect. They've had a year with the playbook. Hopefully, they're in the same offensive system. So, obviously, Corey Davis not in the same offensive system, but going with the same quarterback, same offense, year full of snaps. We saw him come on late in the season. I expect a big leap from Corey Davis this year as well. And as you can see, coming into this range, this is when some quarterbacks start coming off the board. Going to some ADPs for quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers, like 29th, not playing. I'm not paying that. Deshaun Watson, not paying that. Russ Wilson, probably not going to end up with him. Tom Brady, no. Carson Wentz, is he going to be ready for opening day? If he falls, I will pay for him as like the QB7 or QB8. Drew Brees is a good value right now, about the 8th round of drafts. Garoppolo, Stafford, Luck, Roethlisberger. You guys know that I'm high on Patrick Mahomes. And as you can see on all these places, ESPN, Yahoo, FFC, RT Sports, NFL, he's going as the QB 15. I have him pegged as a top 10 QB on the season. Based on the best ball drafts that I'm doing, people are getting real froggy. Okay? They're getting way too froggy. They're like picking him as the QB 7, QB 8. I'm not going to pick him that high, right? If I can get him in the 9th, 10th round, I'm taking him. Hopefully as my QB 2. Because that means that, especially in best ball formats, and I'm nabbing somebody like Stafford, Breeze, Cousins, Roethlisberger. I think Goff is going to regress a little bit, even though he's still getting a great offense with great weapons. Second year in the same offense with the same head coach, who is obviously a genius. He was just way too efficient last year. I posted a tweet about that and an Instagram post about that yesterday, so check my social media to see what that was. He was just way too efficient. He completed touchdowns on like 9%, 9.5% of his targets, and like the league average, the rest of the league was like 6.5. There's no way he maintains that sort of efficiency. So like unless his targets come up, he may throw for the same amount of touchdowns, but it's not going to be on the amount of attempts that he had last year. And Gurley's going to be a monster. If you take 20% off of his touchdowns, he throws 20, not 28, right? It's like he throws less, 20-25% regression. He comes down from like 26, 28 to like 20 or 21. And if you're paying for him over guys like Rivers, who is perennially a QB1, a top 12 QB, Patrick Mahomes, who I think is a top 12 QB with the upside of being a top 5 QB, looking at what Alex Smith did last year, and I think that Mahomes is a more talented quarterback, albeit with way less experience. He will throw more interceptions. So if your league does have interception takeaways, like SFB did, where you lose 4 points for an interception, I did not want Mahomes in that league, but if there's no interceptions, somebody that I definitely want there. Ben Roethlisberger, just know that you're going to have to pick when he's going to have big games. He's going to have some bad games. I think he's perfect for best ball format as long as you get a good SB2 or QB2 around him. Mariota's too cheap. I don't want Carr. Dak Prescott, don't know what to do with him, honestly. I have a couple of shares, but I'm not really loading up on him. I'd much rather have Rivers there. Alex Smith in Washington, I think, has a good cast around him. I think that he'll be fine. I don't think he'll do what he did last year. And late round picks, the guy that I want, if I'm getting him in the 18th round as a QB3, is Lamar Jackson. Who has massive upside, especially in best ball leagues. We talked about this last year with Deshaun Kaiser, right? I was drafting him repeatedly in the 18th round of best ball drafts. Lamar Jackson is that guy for me this year. He's free. I'm paying no draft equity to get him. Yes, he's not the starter right now. Joe Flacco is still in town, but how long is he going to be the starter? Will Joe Flacco get injured? Will they just bench him for the rookie? He's in the last year of his contract. Will they just at some point move to the future and say, you know what, we got to have this kid in there? And if he gets in there, the talent that he has with his arm and his legs, they have enough people around him. Collins is a good running back. Obviously, they have the best receiver on the Raiders, is now the best receiver on the Ravens in Michael Crabtree. He has enough things around him to do well, right? To perform. And I'm totally okay with him doing everything that he does for that team if he gets there. And as a QB3 and the price I don't have to pay for him, if you can get him in the 18th round, go for it. If you're drafting him in the 15th, 16th, or whatever, praying, I think you're giving up a little bit too much equity in some other positions to do that. So he's my favorite late round play right now. Looking at a couple of other late round picks that I like. At running back, if you don't trust the rookies, and there's a lot of them, Royce Freeman, you're not getting him down here at 81. He's going in between the 4th and the 6th rounds. So he's another guy who's a big high riser going up above guys like Tevin Coleman. If you don't think he's going to take the job, if you don't think Ronald Jones is taking the job, if you don't think that Rashad Penny's taking the job, you can invest late on the other guys. Carson for Seattle. You can invest, instead of Freeman, you go with Booker, who may start the season as the starter. You can go with a 0 running back format and take all those guys who are the starters but are undervalued. They're priced as the RB2 on their own team. And by a 5, 6, 7 round difference. And you can then also load up on wide receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks early in the drafts. General Dentiste. I know it's dentist. Thank you very much for the Twitch Prime sub. Show him some love in the chat, guys. And I don't know what to make of this Green Bay situation, so I've pretty much faded it entirely. I think Nick Chubb takes over the job at some point. I don't mind Duke Johnson in PPR formats. You guys know I like Deontay Foreman, but he's coming off of a brutal injury halfway through the season, tore his Achilles, not somebody I really want to invest in. CJ Anderson, I think, is cheap if you're looking for an RB3 or RB4 who should get a lot of the goal line work. Jonathan Stewart's role last year. In terms of best ball formats, I like him. In terms of friends and family leagues or leagues where you have to make transactions, not really as much of a fan of his because I don't want to have to pick the week that he kind of goes off. You know, I'd rather just let him play when he scores 2 touchdowns, and that's where best ball comes into play for me. Here's Chris Carson, like I was talking about. LeGarrette Blount, somebody I'm not really investing in this year. Latavius Murray, backing up and should have a good year, should outperform his ADP if Dalvin Cook stays healthy the entire year. If Dalvin Cook is not healthy the entire year, Latavius Murray will most definitely outperform his ADP. Like I said, if you don't think that Drake is the guy in Miami, Kalen Ballage, definitely in play. Austin Eckler, a player that I like but don't really want to draft him early. I think that Jordan Wilkins, going off of Mike Clay's recommendation, he thinks that Jordan Wilkins is going to end up being the guy in Indy. Again, not spending much draft capital to go get him as your RB4 or your RB5. I think he's fine. Other than that, I want guys with upside if I'm picking players late. So that's who I'm looking for there. Wide receivers, let's go all the way down to like wide receiver 40 plus. Jamison Crowder, way too cheap. Emmanuel Sanders, way too cheap. Not really touching DJ Moore. I think he's good. I think the kid can play. I think he's got talent. I don't typically invest in rookie wide receivers. Yes, there was that 1 year anomaly a couple of years ago, but I'm not going for him this year. I'd rather invest in the other bigger goal line targets. That may come back to burn me. We'll find out. Robbie Anderson, too cheap versus his ADP in terms of upside. For best balls, Martavis Bryant, if you think he's going to not get suspended, definitely in play. Cameron Meredith, one of my favorites personally. I like him a lot. Kenny Golladay, I think he takes a leap in the second year, same as Corey Davis. Again, being drafted as a 57th wide receiver off the board. Rashard Matthews, same idea, 59th wide receiver off the board. Paul Richardson, another big-time, great best ball target. When he catches a 50-yard touchdown, he'll play for you. You don't have to pick the week that it's going to happen. And Quincy Enunwa in all formats for me is somebody that we have to pay attention to. A lot of people have forgotten and about him and how talented he is and how much he gets peppered in that Jets offense. I think that he is a fantastic player and somebody that we really need to pay attention to. And Albert Wilson moving to Miami. Him and Amendola have moved to Miami. Amendola has never shown the ability to stay healthy. He's one concussion away from being out of the league. I think that Albert Wilson takes a big step up in terms of his volume this year. Thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate y'all being here. Thank you for being a part of the first NFL fantasy football based stream of the year. I've got a whole lot more streams planned. We're going to go back to our normal schedule during football season. Everything exported to Facebook and YouTube. So thank you for tuning in. If you're watching this on YouTube, do me a favor. subscribe to the channel, and be sure you got to ring that bell. You got to hit the notifications bell. Subscribing does not make these videos show up in your sub box anymore. So if you are a YouTube subscriber, make sure you hit that notifications bell, and we'll catch up to you next time. Thanks for being here, guys. Bye.